Hello everyone, welcome along to another edition of the BVI Pilots podcast. As usual, we have an interview segment at the start today, and then we have the latest news that we found over the past, I think it's 2 weeks since we did one. Of course, as usual, we have Johnny with us today, hosting along with me.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's good to be here. Seems like it's been longer than 2 weeks, but it's not. It's been 2 weeks, but I guess it's because we like to do this so much. But
I know. Well, we've had returns to college and stuff, so it's gone. It's dragged a bit.
Oh man, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
College and I love the sim, but you got to do work and you got to do college, so it's like
you can only do what you can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So our interview today is going to be with John Sanders. Many of you may know him from the WhatsApp or the various groups that we have, and especially from vatsim. Hey John, how's it going?
Hey, doing well, guys. How are ya?
So of course we said at the beginning, we want to get people on this podcast who have done things that are different, whether it be with flying or anything related to flight sim or aviation, and not just get people on for the sake of it. And John has done something that I don't recall any other VI person doing as of yet. There's a process to apply, but I think it's something completely new, which is controlling on vatsim. He does various airports, controlling on clearance and ground, but I'll let him talk a bit more about that. So I guess let's start at the beginning. How did you get into the idea of controlling on something like vatsim?
I think what the main concept of me getting into the controlling was that I was actually flying a lot on the vatsim network, and I was kind of thinking to myself, you know what? I wonder what it would be like to be on the other side and actually control rather than fly, because flying is all well and good. It's just that I wanted to be the controller now instead of being the pilot. And once I got into controlling, I couldn't stop controlling. And I started off controlling in 2008, and I've been controlling ever since then.
Yeah. You remember the old codec? That old thing.
And actually, I was telling. Saying, I actually have a file on my computer that someone had made, and my voice was featured in that because I was controlling Gatwick Ground at the time. This was back New Year's Day in 2018. So this was before the new Kodak came along. And trust me, when I listened to my voice on that person's file, it sounded really bad.
Wow, yeah.
It was horrible. it was really bad, and I'm like, ew, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I sounded like that. Oh, it was horrible.
Do you get to I've got an interesting question.
Sure.
Then I'll move back over to you, Declan. Let you pick up the next one.
Yeah, no problem. You go ahead.
Do you pick your hours, or do they tell you when they need you?
It's all on a volunteer basis. If you're doing an event, there are some times where you will need to pick shifts about what times you want to do when you want to do the event. So what you would do at that point is you would sign up for a slot. Like, for example, if I was going to do like the Cleveland Crossfire event, which would be, or not the Cleveland, but it would be like if we were having like a event in Cleveland Center Airspace at Detroit, it would, I would sign up for Detroit Airport at clearance delivery at Detroit, and then I would be asked to do that slot. Let's say from 7 to 8 o'clock or 7 to 9 o'clock Eastern time, I'd be required to do those 1 or 2 hours time slots. And then somebody would relieve me after that. But no, in regular situations, controlling is you control whenever you want. Now, in some circumstances, if I'm controlling over at Gatwick in the UK, there are some times where I will be asked to log off because of mentoring sessions or like an exam or something like that. And then in those cases, those exams basically require the tester to do everything, ground or delivery up to their whatever they're training for.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So yeah, so that's kind of where that has to take place. So yeah.
Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, you got these controllers. It's a hobby for them. They just log on and do a few hours controlling, just like we do a few hours of flying. I mean, okay, so to go back, what was the process for kind of applying and getting into the obviously I believe it was VAT USA you got into, and then getting the software set up for this?
Actually, the process was kind of intense because actually what had to happen was I was at the point of giving up because I was like, okay, how do I use this thing? Because some parts of it were accessible, some parts were not. Like originally, before the author put in this piece of code in the application where it allowed the pilot messages to come through the private chat log. It was all in a graphical message, in a graphic thing where you had to read the messages in this graphic. But and I actually had to post on the VRC forums on the vatsim website and ask anybody, is there a way that you could make the messages be put into the private chat log? And so the developer writes me back and he says, yeah, I'll see what I can do. So he was able to make it accessible in that way where he could actually make it so that the messages were readable by JAWS in that way. As far as getting into the controlling aspect, it took me a little bit because I kept failing at the test. It's like a 25-question test, but eventually I got it. Now, the process of getting into VAT UK was a lot easier because I was actually in vatsim as an ATC controller already. All I had to do was just go through and submit my region and my division transfer requests, and then the person on the receiving end approved it, and then that's how I got into the UK. And I've been with the UK for ever since 2012.
Very cool. So, did you have mentoring sessions in the US when you applied? Did you go through that, or was it just simply the test?
No, absolutely. I mean, after the testing was done, I got welcomed to Albuquerque. That's the first controller spot I controlled at was Albuquerque. And then after, I did get mentoring sessions at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. That's the first airport I controlled at. And then after that, it was I was just basically bouncing around all over the place, really to find a home where I was wanted. And then I went from vatsim to Cleveland at Detroit Airport for a while. I left there, went to Seattle for a while. Well, actually, no, excuse me. I left from Cleveland, went up to Toronto and controlled there for a while. I went back to the U.S., controlled at Seattle for a while, went to Oakland, went there, controlled for a while. L.A., didn't get too far with them. And then I finally put my transfer request in to go to England, over to the UK, and that's where I've been ever since. So.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot of airports, and of course they all have slightly different procedures. I mean, a UK definitely does for the US, so I guess that's a whole new learning curve. That's.
Oh
really
yeah, I actually had to learn a lot, and their SIDs change all the time over at Gatwick, so I definitely have to learn new names and different numbers and different letters and figure out, which way they go, which direction, and, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, it's like muscle memory. You got to get into a whole new routine. So to get into the technical specifics, what software, because I believe it's an older piece of software that you use, it's not actually used in the training anymore, but what software do you use, and how exactly is this for accessibility?
VRC is somewhat accessible. Like, it has like standard Windows conventions, like the menu bars, the dialog boxes, that kind of thing. So in like the open sector dialog, you have to open up a sector file. That's accessible. The settings dialog is accessible. You have the the settings. You have like the controllers and chat dialog. That's accessible. All the dialog boxes are accessible. It's just that one small part of the program was not, where the pilot messages came in, and then it's called VRC. Now VRC is not used at Vat UK. A lot of people do not like it that I'm using VRC because I'm using an older transponder code bank, and it's disrupting their flow of procedures. So I have not heard anything back from the HEC training department as far as what they can do. There was a website where I could go on there and I could actually type in the two ICA codes that I wanted, and a squawk code would automatically be generated. All I had to do was copy and paste the code into the squawk code. And then that was that was a chore, but it was working for a while. But then they took that Squawk's website down from the vatsim UK.
So applying. Sorry, carry on. Yeah, okay. So applying is, obviously you got to go through the process, and technically you need VRC. And you mentioned there a sector file. Could you explain a little bit about what that does?
Yeah, the sector file is basically a file that basically concentrates on the airport you're controlling at. It's more of a visual thing. It's about the mapping of the airport and what's around it, and what areas it covers, that kind of thing. Now, the POF file, which is the position operations file, that has your sector, your controllers list, your squawk code banks, that kind of thing. The alias file, the TXT file, that's kind of like your list of commands that you can type in text. That's all that really is used for. It's not really that important. The alias file isn't for the UK, but the POF and the sector file are.
And you can get those, or you'll be given them by the training process, right?
It depends on. I was given them, and I backed them up. So, I had backed everything up. So I have it all on backup on my external in case my hard drive crashes. So I have a backup of everything.
Right. Yeah. So obviously you have a lot of experience with this. But on an average day, let's start with clearance. So, could you walk us through how you would go about giving a pilot a clearance, and how you would do that with a screen reader? I think you use JAWS, right? So yeah.
Yes. What I would do is I would basically, if I was controlling over at Gatwick and they wanted to go to Heathrow, for example, I would say, let's say, American 3 Heavy cleared to London Heathrow International Airport, Big and 2 X-ray departure, then as filed. Expect a Big and 2 arrival. Climb via said. Departure frequency is on Unicom. Squawk is 4310. So I would tell that to American 3 Heavy. American 3 Heavy would read it back and say American 3 Heavy cleared to London Heathrow, Big and 2 X-ray departure, Big and 2 arrival. Climb via said. Departure frequency is on Unicom. Squawk is 4310. And then so I would say American 3 Heavy, your readback is correct. Call ground when ready for pushback and taxi 121.8. Have a good day. And so you'd read that back and say contact ground when ready for push and taxi 121.8. Bye. So you would say that, and then that would end my communication with clearance. Now for ground, if you want me to do ground, but you were asking on an average day. You were asking how many pilots would I get on the ground on an average day?
More how would you go about doing it? For clearance, for example, I'll go on to ground in a sec, but for clearance, so would you get a notification, I guess, when a pilot files a flight plan and you can see all the details of their plan in the software?
Yes, I would. Yeah, actually, there would be like a little sound I would hear, and I would have to go into the tools menu with Alt-T, then go to aircraft list, and in that list, it would say arrivals and departures, and above that, if there were departures, the first thing would be departures, and underneath that, it would be the aircraft and how many aircraft were in that departures column. And then underneath that, there would be arrivals, and underneath that, the arrivals would be listed.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, we'll move to ground. I mean, firstly, I think ground has got to be one of the trickier things, right? Especially, I mean, now you've memorized the taxiways. I mean, that's incredible. I don't know how you memorize all the taxiways of an airport, but how is it giving a taxi routing? You know, do you kind of memorize this whole, I know what stand they're on and I know what runway they're going to?
Basically, I tell them, could you please tell me what taxiway you'll be pushing back onto? And they don't have a problem with doing that. And then if they tell me that, I can use that as a landmark and say, okay, American 3 Heavy, taxi runway 26 left via Lima, Papa, Alpha 2, Alpha Sierra, Alpha 2.
Now, here's a question about that. When you tell someone to taxi, do you know or do you have a way of looking to see if maybe it's a busy day and you've got people that's already on the runways getting set to take off? Is there a way you're able to look and see?
Not really, no, unfortunately. I actually have to. Tower's usually online or director's online normally. In the afternoon, it gets real busy in the afternoon over here, Eastern, so it'd be like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock over there, UK time. So normally I won't have to worry about it because I'll have controllers above me, so they'll help me out with like takeoffs and stuff like that.
And I guess otherwise you could note take too, I guess, if you know where someone went before.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, on a average night, I probably would say I probably get up to like 10 to 15 aircraft on the ground wanting to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe more, maybe 20. I don't know. But normally it's a lot. And there have been some situations where it's just gotten packed where it was really hard for me to keep track of everybody and figuring out who wanted to go where, what clearances, who had clearance, who didn't have clearance, and I would always be asked to the pilots who has not had clearance, who has clearance, speaker call sign so I know who it is, and they don't have a problem with doing that.
Yeah, so I guess for us, because, you know, you've got most of the info, but it takes longer to get to it with the screen reader, you work with the pilots a lot more.
Exactly, you have to. You have to.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You have to, because if they're not willing to work with you, then you can't. Then you can't communicate with them. So.
Yeah.
Do you ever get very many like anybody that just wants to give you a hard time as a controller? Like maybe they don't like the way you're doing things. Do you ever get a hard time or?
Oh yeah, especially in the UK. I mean. There will be a few pilots that will be like, "Hey, you're taking too long. Hurry it up," or they'll say, "Have you gotten your certification and this and that?" They'll private message me, and and they'll. I mean, a lot of these pilots over in the UK, like they like playing by the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not.
I definitely know what you mean. Haven't flown out of there. They want things to be 100% realistic, and it's like, calm down. This is a free multiplayer network.
Exactly. Well, and then too, I also look at it like, okay, are these guys studying to get their pilot's license? Are they studying? I have to look at it from an academic standpoint too. Are they looking to get their ATC license? Are they looking to get their private pilot's license? There's got to be a reason why they want it by the book.
Yeah, it's about a balance, right? They got to accept that it's a free network. It's not real life, but it's also immersive.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, and like I said, I mean, over on ground, over there. I mean, a lot of the pilots are really cool. They'll work with me, but I do get some. Yes, to answer your question, I do get some pilots that can get really snappy with me, and so I'll get pilots. I mean, because there have been some times where I monitor, and this is another thing I do, in the audio for vatsim client. You can actually monitor another controller's channel. So that's what I do. I monitor ground. If ground's online at my airport, I monitor his channel too. And I can overhear what the pilots in that ground controller are saying. And sometimes they will bring up the whole American thing, and I say, because I don't know, like, if it's evening over there or if it's daytime over there. I don't know. So I'll say, Speedbird 235, your back is correct. Contact ground 121.8. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Or I'll say good afternoon or whatever. And I'll get a pilot over there saying, it's actually evening over here. And so it's like, it's like, why? I mean, I'm not from the UK. I'm American here. So, and it's kind of like, hey, take it easy.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
So you don't do ground. You do the incoming traffic. Is that what you do? I missed that part.
I do outbounds only. I do outbounds on clearance delivery, but I also do inbound and outbound on ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to basically taxi aircraft to their stands and actually taxi them from their stands.
Right.
So
something I was telling. I forget who it was, Declan. I can't remember if he was on that night or not, but we were talking to someone else, and I said, there's certain areas where we wouldn't be able to do the job, like air control. We couldn't do that one, I wouldn't think, because of, I don't know, because what it reads, but I would think that doing tower would probably be almost impossible for us, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would actually. There are a lot of people that have actually asked me, why can't I get my S2? And I says, well, if they could implement a way where I could actually do it, and I would have to get a lot of position reports from the pilots saying, hey, I'm lifted off the ground. I'm at this level or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I'd have to say, okay, contact departure, monitor Unicom or whatever. But there'd have to be a lot of pilot coordination if I was going to do tower. Yeah, it's very visual, yeah.
And I don't even know, like, I've seen on TV, because I have a little bit of vision, so I've seen on TV before, like, some of these radars that they use. Some of them look like, it'd be like a circle. It's got different colors, and then have, like, lines going through it with different, so it's, some of them are very visual radars.
Yeah, and a lot of sighted people in the real world have asked me, have you ever thought about doing it in the real world? And I said, well, not really, because I can't. Honestly, I can't.
They don't have a VRC in the real world.
They don't. They really don't.
Could you picture, a pilot coming in and they find out that there's a blind controller bringing them in?
Oh God! Actually, I could, I would have to memorize and just take what I learned.
They'd be asking for a divert. I want to get a divert.
Exactly. Well, obviously, I'd have to take what I've learned from the vatsim world and apply it to real world, because it's not supposed to be used for the real world. But I think the terminology would probably be the same, because I've listened to live ATC traffic on the internet, and that's how.
And I can tell you from first-hand experience. I flew with my friend George. I've flown in a 777 and a 737, and it's pretty much dead on. There's a few things I think that he might have said that I've not heard much on here, but it's pretty much right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with, how the controllers were trained to what their phraseology is, and it's all about the controller and what their style is.
I just get stuck when they talk 100 miles an hour. I'm like, can I get a repeat, please?
And you do, especially at the bigger airports, they do like. I'm like, speak English, please.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, slow it down.
I mean, that's the thing. We know the phraseology. That's not the, I mean, it's not that you don't know the phraseology for Tower or Senna. We do, and pilots in general on vatsim. It's incredible. I mean, they know their stuff. I mean, maybe they miss something out here and there. You would say in the real world, but in general,
exactly.
It's pretty realistic. It's pretty professional.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, I've done. I have over 2,700 hours controlling time on clearance delivery on vatsim alone.
Wow, that's
amazing.
That's
crazy.
I think when I was with George, I know he did some communicating about weather as well. But it was that when we were flying, the weather was kind of not like horrible, but it wasn't the best weather. So I think he did a little bit of communicating with weather, but I think that was just because.
Yeah. And of course, there's different procedures in different areas, right? I get, because in the UK, you have to request pushback, and you have to request startup, and you have to give them certain info when you call for clearance, which you don't in the US on some of it. So obviously, there's going to be little mistakes, and I guess as a controller, it's the same. It's like
exactly
they say different things.
Exactly. Well, and then also too, when I'm controlling in the U.S., I control at Cleveland and Chicago. So, when I'm on O'Hare delivery, O'Hare is, I don't want to say it's busy, but it can get busy. So there are, I'm only able to do delivery over there.
Yeah.
At both those airports. So basically what we have is we've got, I'm only responsible for clearing them out, and then I hand them off to Unicom or hand them over to ground if the ground's online. And then sometimes what I'll do is I will just wait, and it could be maybe a good 15 minutes before I get another aircraft.
Right, yeah, because you're dealing with all the outbounds. Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which sometimes that can probably get pretty busy. Declan, you might already have this question down, but I'll throw it out there in case you don't.
Yeah, go for it.
Training-wise, when you got started, what did you go through on training? Like, what all was you put through to be able to even get started?
My S1 rating was actually given to me because of my situation, and back then we really didn't have what we have now today. Like the author wasn't aware that I was visually impaired until October of 2010.
So he just gave you the position?
He just gave me the S1 certification that USA did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
wow.
That's cool.
And then I had a hard time figuring out what air traffic center I wanted to be with, too. So that was another issue that I had.
So for someone who wants to apply today, do you think they could go through the training program using VRC? I mean, would you advise them to contact the ARTCC or whatever it may be to, let them know that adaptations need to be made and kind of hope that happens?
Oh, yeah, definitely. What I would recommend, anybody that wants to get out there and do this, what I would recommend is really trying to find an ARTCC that you want to control at if you're in the U.S., or if you're in Canada, find a FIR, which is a Flight Information Region. Or in the UK, you select a community group, and you contact that group, and you basically tell them, I'm totally blind, not able to see, or, and I will need some, I use VRC. So hopefully they can provide the sector file. If not, then I have everything that the controller would need, because I have everything all backed up.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if any case, like for JAWS, obviously they're going to want to use JAWS to do this.
Yeah.
If they do have JAWS, you've got the script or whatever it is that they need probably to read or whatever, right?
It's just another modified exe file that the author did.
Right.
That's all it really is. All you got to do is copy and paste it into the folder, and you're ready to go. There's no scripts or anything that you got to install. It's just an exe you just got to override.
Okay.
Ready to go.
Okay, right. Cool.
So, yeah, it's pretty much all it is, honestly.
Yeah, because I know a lot of these areas, I know that UK has a TeamSpeak that you can go on and you can chat with them on voice or text. So, I mean, I guess that's one good way to get to know people and say, can you hook me up with someone who can go through the training, but obviously they need to understand that you're using an old piece of
software. Yeah. Yeah, and I've already told the ATC training department about about the squawk code allocators and stuff like that, and they keep referring me back to Euroscope, and I kept telling them, I can't use Euroscope, I have to use VRC and this and that, and then it's like, and then I posted on the forum, on the VRC forum and the Euroscope about how Euroscope is not accessible, and I got a lot of support from the other controllers in the different areas about Euroscope, and one of the guys, I think he's from Germany, he says, let's make a way. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's make it accessible.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that they're willing to reach out and say, "Hey, we've got someone that is blind, and we're willing to make it work. Let's let them do this too." I think that's amazing.
Yeah, especially that USA, it's getting a little bit better, but it's not there. It's not equaled out. There's not that many people that want to advocate for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it seems like mostly it's Europe, Germany, UK, France, Germany and the UK mostly. But no, they're really, like I said, the controllers are really cool over in the UK. They're more than willing to help you out, if you need it. If they're not busy, they'll. If you're on delivery and your ground controller's above you, you can ask the guy. You can say, hey, I need help with this. If they're not busy, they said, sure. What do you need help with? And you ask them. They're like, oh, okay, not a problem, sure. So. You tell them, they'll tell you the correction, you tell the pilot. It's not...
One thing that I find, I don't know about you, Declan, if you've ran into this before, it's happened to me a few times. You go to do a flight, and you go ahead and reposition, and first of all, nobody's on center. No one's there. So you go to, do what we normally do when there's no one on. Then you get out to the runway, and then someone comes on the center, and I'll tell you what, sometimes they're not very nice about it. Like, they're like, why are you on the runway? Well, you wasn't here just 2 or 3 minutes ago, so, like, it's like, take a deep breath, because it's not our fault.
Yeah, I've had that sometimes. That is the thing, isn't it? VATSIM, is not like the real world in that there's always someone on in the real world. VATSIM, they can come on at any time. So you could be in the middle of takeoff, you could be just climbing, you could be about to land, and then someone, I've had it where we're at 500 feet and someone contacts me, and I have to call them up and get clearance to land really quickly, which is, of course, not realistic. But, that's, I guess, just the way it works.
Yeah,
VATSIMs.
Yeah, cause and I always just tell them, I just tell them, hey, you wasn't on. I did what I needed to do. I followed the steps, for the one being on, and usually it's no big deal. But sometimes, man, you get the sour egg. But
yeah, actually, people are over in the UK. They're really cool about it. They understand, but I think. But you just have to be careful who you get. You know what I mean? If it's somebody that's understanding, like I had this pilot, he was like yelling and hollering at me because like, well, what are you doing on ground? You don't know what you're doing and this and that. And I had to private message him, and I told him, I said, look, I'm totally blind and I'm not able to see. And then he apologized about it. He's like, well, I can make one of my biggest suggestions to you is just ask the pilots what runway they're on or what taxiway they're on.
Yeah.
And then that's what he did, and that's what I've been doing ever since that time. So,
gotcha.
Sometimes, there would be nobody online, and I'd log on, and there'd be like a whole bunch of aircraft waiting, and, they'd be pushing back, and I'd be logged on to delivery or whatever. And
you got to find out where they are.
Exactly. And
maybe
first of all,
no, I think that maybe one of these days we'll get with you while you're doing doing your job, and we'll show people what it's like.
Yeah,
exactly.
You
never know.
If you guys can, it'd be really cool to get a group of you guys out there, and you could actually do like a stream and actually say, okay, this is how it works in the UK,
Yeah.
And you can actually, because I would imagine you probably get a lot of comments on on your streams already about you guys doing flights from sighted users. About how they couldn't believe
a lot of them are amazed.
It's unreal that we're able to do this. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. We're and now we're on Apple, we're on all these different platforms,
sure.
So we're really trying to get the name out there.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think that I think that there are people out there that just don't know, and but I really think that once people understand and they listen and they look at it and they say, wow, look at how far technology has gone. I mean, it's advanced so much ever since the early days of airplanes,
Yeah. Yep.
And so, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's really. People. The sighted pilots. They over comms. They say, they'll say to me, May. They call me mate all the time over in the UK. That's just how they are. They said, May, I cannot believe you're doing a brilliant job over here. I give you kudos for this.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah, they say it over comms. They private message me, So it gets interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's something we should say to people, because a lot of people are nervous about getting on vatsim. They think, oh, someone's going to have a go at me. And there are always going to be a few controllers who aren't so pleased
Sure.
about us blind pilots. But a majority of the pilots and controllers are really supportive. And I put posts on VAT UK forums and said, I'm a blind pilot, and to notify controllers if I need to reposition, this is why. And all the responses have been really positive and say, wow, this is great. You're actually trying to do this and follow along with the rest of the community. So I wonder, for the future, what sort of things would you like to see? I mean, obviously our dream would be an accessible app where we could see where all the planes were and all the info.
Right.
Realistically, what are you hoping to get in the future, maybe?
I would think that I just want to do like the complete scale from top to bottom, center, approach, departure, tower, ground, clearance, delivery. Honestly, I think that I would really like to see a full-fledged application out there. It'd be accessible. It would have like drop-down combo boxes and list boxes for changing routes, instead of having to go through and look up routes and actually figure out, okay, this is the SID they need to be on, that kind of thing. And then having to do all this work, and have it be automated, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So if any coders are listening, or people from vatsim, or even pilots, get on the forums, make posts about this, get involved, talk to us. You can email us, bvipilotspodcast@gmail.com. We'll pass anything on to John.
Yep.
And, we see if we can do anything. You never know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, And then, as I told somebody else, I says, if vatsim aren't careful, they're going to have a lot more blind controllers on their hands when they know what to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I know.
And I'll tell you another area that is really that's been really good with working with you as far as us pilots. Canada's really nice for the most part too. Like they seem really laid back. I've not had any problem with Canada.
Canada is that's how they're raised. That's just their culture up there. They're not going to have a go at people. They're not going to do that. They're one of the more relaxed countries.
Here's a true story for you. Mm-hmm. My equipment on my jet when I first started simming wasn't working, or MBA was messing. I can't remember, but I couldn't land because I couldn't read nothing. And the controller took me all the way down by heading, all the way. I mean, gave me heading by heading, altitude to altitude until I was on the ground. They don't do that every day, I can guarantee you that, but it was awesome that they were able to stick with me. And, it's like, oh, just hold on, let's see if we can get you landed safely, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, at least we tried, but it worked.
And
that's great.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and then actually in Toronto, they're really cool over there. I actually flown through their center before, and the guy, his name was Anthony, and he really wanted to talk with me. I mean, these Canadians, between the UK and Canada, they're chatterboxes. I mean,
that's why I did a podcast.
Well, me and Declan's always said, if things mess up, people don't need to get all irate about it. It's simming. It's not, it's not the end of the world for making a mistake.
Yeah, camp, we know what it's like. It may mess up, but the controllers want to help you.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you say, "Oh, can you take me back around? Let's have another go," they will probably, as long as it's not crazy busy, give you a heading, give you an altitude, take you back around.
Yeah. Well, because that one day I was just going to log off. I didn't want to cause any problems, and they're like, "No, hold on. Are you up for us landing you by headings and altitude?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh. Do you remember what airport you were flying into?
I was up here in Canada. Is where I was.
You were flying into okay. You were probably going into Toronto or somewhere.
Yeah,
else.
Toronto.
Okay. Yeah.
It was Toronto.
Yeah, because up in Toronto, as I said, they're really cool over there. I mean, they don't yell at you at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they will give you a good tongue lashing, but if they get busy, but
oh yeah,
that's.
And I mean, I've only been simming not even 6 months. I think I started back Declan in May, I think early May.
Sounds right.
But I'm a quick learner and it's a lot of fun. So
I haven't got any more questions written down here, but it's great to see the other perspective from the other side of that. You got any other questions, John?
No, man. I just really appreciate. I really enjoy just everybody coming on. Like you did, John, coming on and sharing your experiences with us. That's what it's about. So
sure.
I really appreciate it, man. It's good to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Right. That concludes our interview section. Then, thanks for coming on, John. It's been really interesting. Another great interview for the podcast. And we will see you all in the next section for the news from the past couple of weeks in the BVI community. All right, hey guys, welcome back to the nearly said interview. We've done the interview, the news section of the podcast. And the first thing we're going to just briefly discuss is, John has been trying out FSX over the past few weeks, and I've always advocated for FSX and said, look, personally, I think I wouldn't say the superior sim in general, it's an older sim, but in terms of accessibility for us and removing the lag from Tramp, which is currently a problem, and all these other things, I think FSX is better. Also, it's cheaper, which means that people who start out with it aren't going to waste quite so much money if they, decide simming isn't for them, for example. And there's just the menus you can access easier. What do you think about it, John?
I'll just say this. To start with, I wish I would have started off with FSX because, like you said, Declan, the FSX is, I'm not going to say it's like, superior to everything else, but it's just easier to manage. The menus are there. You navigate a little bit. You can read everything. I would recommend anybody that's just starting out to fly, if I was going to train them, it's the program I'm going to put them on. I'm going to put them on FSX because it's not going to lag them. It's not going to jam them up. And it's just a lot easier to use, I think. And the money that you spend on these other sims, I had P3D in the beginning, and I put out some money. I'll just say that. I won't go into dollar amounts, but I put out some money, and now I'm like, man, why did I not just have some patience and use FSX?
Yeah. I mean, because a lot of people will say, why are you using FSX? It's an old sim. It's, P3D's the way forward, blah, 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 blah. And my reasons are always the same to them.
Yeah, and the thing is, like right now, I used to not be able to do my fuel that well. I wasn't very good at doing it with P3D, but right now, I'm flying to Texas, KDFW, and I've got about 3 hours left, and I'm so accurate on my fuel to where literally I'm going to have a little bit of fuel left over, but not much at all, because I'm able to manage my fuel that much easier. I've got like 42,400 pounds of fuel, and I've got about 4 hours left of travel. So that fuel is going to be almost dead on. I mean, it's going to be pretty much right on.
Yeah, right. So I'll tell you what, I'll go into some specifics. So people who say, why do I use FSX? So it lags less. The interface with Tramp and just generally switching views things, it lags less. The reason being that it's a 32-bit application, and people will say, oh, that's not a good thing. And I've heard so many people say, I can't use this. It's 32-bit. My RAM won't support it. My blah 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 won't support it. That makes no difference whatsoever. You can run a 32-bit application just as if it were a 64-bit, and in fact it lags less because of that. And in a flight sim where we need, to be as quick as possible on vatsim, say, to enter a heading, to enter an altitude, to go direct to a waypoint, especially with the Tramp because it lags, we know this, FSX is far better at stopping that lag. Now, secondly, you can access the menus easily in flight. You can use Object Nav, and this is something you can't do with P3D as much. You can use Object Nav and easily go through all the menus. That means in flight or on the ground after you've loaded into the plane, you can easily get to the fuel menu. You can easily get to the sound menu and change your sounds. For example, I know the sound thing is really cool because you've got all these sliders, cockpit, environment, and in P3D, once you've loaded into your plane, it's a real pain to go and actually get to that and change anything around.
Yeah. I was able to get right into my weather the other day. I was like, I want to change the weather for once. In the middle of flight, I go into my weather settings, I change the weather, and bam, there it is. I'm able to get right into the menu, no problem.
Yeah. And as I say, it's cheaper, and a lot of things for FSX are cheaper because it's an older sim. Whether it is RAS, the runway awareness system, whatever it may be, The only thing that isn't cheaper is Ideal Flight, but we won't go there because I don't agree with why it's more expensive for FSX. But in general, there's even some planes like Just Flight planes which fly really well actually, the Just Flight 7.5 and 7.6 models, that you can only get for FSX, but that's what we want. We want these planes that it might be payware, but they still work really well. Now, of course, some people will say, look, P3D is the future. In a way, I agree with you, because in a few years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, who knows? Maybe FSX, it's a very old sim. It is from 2007 or 8 or something. It may not be supported. Who knows? By then, of course, we'll have TFM, and it won't be such a problem that we have to use P3D. Who knows? By then, maybe Microsoft Flight Sim will be accessible. Maybe we'll have a whole new sim that's we haven't heard of. You don't know what's going to happen in 3, 4, 5 years. But at the moment, I can't see any logical reason to say P3D is massively better than FSX. At the moment, FSX is still supported. It's fine.
And I just tell you, just because, you can get this feature. No, I'm looking for the ability to be able to when you are simming. And of course, Declan, you know this. You got to be able to you want to be able to get around quickly. So if something happens and all of a sudden your altitude starts dropping, you don't want to have to wait 20 seconds to get on an altitude to fix it, or to get on your vertical and fix it, or whatnot. You want quality, and I'm sorry, but in my eyes, it might be the older sim, but the quality is there.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, and tramp lag's less. I mean, P3D, you've got the tramp lag. You and Josh and a few other people have had issues with it hanging, whether it be the graphics card or it just stops responding. I find P3D is far more, it's unreliable. It will crash or it will hang. FSX very rarely does that. I don't think I've ever really had that.
P3D still won't work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. Yeah, it's one of them deals where I mess with it so many times, I'm like, I'm done. I want to sim. I don't want to have to worry about doing troubleshooting every time I want to fly.
Yeah.
So, FSX, that's my opinion too.
Yeah, and of course it's better. I have to say it's better for low-end systems. My system is, I think, an i5 processor. It's about 2 gigahertz, and I have 8 gigs of RAM. That is my PC. Obviously, I have a Shadow, which is a far better spec, and could easily run P3D if I wanted. But for years, I ran FSX on this thing. Now, I could run P3D on that setup, but it was sluggish. So if you have a low-end configuration, you want to look at FSX, because it is far better on the wallet and on performance. And that kind of leads us well on to the next thing. There's been some developments with FS 2020, and I'll start out by saying it's still not worth it, so don't go and buy it. And if you've got Game Pass and you want to experiment, by all means, but don't go and buy it. But I just wanted to, we've got to be fair, so I'm going to keep covering it, and if there's a development, we've got to say what Microsoft have given us and what they haven't. So, it turns out, after some experimenting by a guy on the Discord, who I always forget his name, I'll have to check that, but he did some experimenting. He's been around in the community for a while, but kind of, I guess, took a bit of a break recently, and essentially there is a startup screen with this where you have to go through all the setup. And he did a guide which is on the Audio Games forum of how to do it, because it requires a lot of NVDA OCR, optical character recognition, and a lot of arrowing around. So what that means is Microsoft haven't given us jack shit in terms of accessibility. I don't want people thinking, oh, this is fantastic, Microsoft have built this amazing sim and they've given us all this accessibility. No, they haven't. This is just us using the tools we have with OCR to get some primitive form of accessibility. So,
don't get that mixed up. They've not given you anything. Nothing.
Yeah, they haven't made this.
And I said that before. People they took the word accessibility and they ran with it the wrong direction, thinking that that's what Microsoft meant. We've said it before. I'll say it again. until I see actual accessibility for the blind and screen readers, it's not accessible. It's just not.
Yeah. So you can do that, or you can go to sight to person. Then with OCR, you can go and choose an aircraft. You can go, I believe, and choose your airport with a lot of fiddling around, but it is doable, and you can load into a plane. Now, from what I hear, Tramp, there is a version for the sim, and there is also an AI assistant for the sim, which is pretty cool. Now, this is one thing that's cool. Again, not made for blind people, but it is cool. It will actually start the plane up for you, taxi it to the runway, and then you have to take off. Or maybe it takes off, I forget, but it takes off and then you have to do the flight in the air and things like that. Now, from what I hear in the jets, and this is coming from people who've tested it, not many people are going to buy this because, in my opinion, it's not ready. You can't really do a full flight in it, in a jet, properly on vatsim or with any of the add-ons that we know and love. So Josh has tried it, and the guy on the Discord tried it. And apparently, the autopilot on the airliners is not great. They've had problems where it's taken off and started overspeeding, or it's not bringing the flaps in properly, and all these kinds of things with the AI function. It's very difficult to do a flight, so you're not going to be, jumping on vatsim with this or anything. Now, the one thing that he did say, and I've seen from his social media that he pointed out, was that the sounds are very good, and that concurs with what we've heard from the videos. And I'm not talking plane sounds here. The plane sounds are garbage. I'm talking outside airport sounds, the ambience, the jets on the outside, all the stuff you would expect to hear. The actual plane sounds don't sound anything like the real thing, but, on the outside, at least around the airport, that is something that FSX and P3D don't have. So that is one thing, but of course, as I say, it's not in a state where you're going to pull it out and start doing full flights. It doesn't have all the planes / sceneries that FSX and P3D have. It's not accessible, it's just we can use OCR. And so it's really a matter of waiting for Microsoft to either add accessibility, add TTS, or at least fix the AI assistant so that this thing isn't going to keep overspeeding, I guess, and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing to think about is right now flying that thing, you don't have all the they might be there for you to set up if you could get to the menu, but you don't have all these hotkeys that we've got now, where you just hit a button and bam, it does this, does that, does this. You got to be able to get there and set that stuff up probably. I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know if it has the hotkeys available. I don't know, but
I think it has default hotkeys, but getting to change them will be pretty tough. I mean, if you got to use OCR with this thing, if you think, I don't know what menus it has, but if you want to go and change the fuel or the weather, you're going to have to use OCR for all of that. I imagine. It's not like you can. I'm just going to
tell you, hands down, if someone said, John, would you fly it right now? I wouldn't. I want to fly and enjoy myself. And it sounds like that is just something where you're going to have to navigate and do all this ridiculous stuff to just do a flight. And I'm not going through that.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I do believe you can access the flight planner of it again with OCR, and it can generate a route. Again, SimBrief plans are more accurate than the flight planner. I had a real world pilot who I watched a video, and he did a route from somewhere to London Heathrow in England. I think it was Manchester on SimBrief and on that, and he says, look, SimBrief gives you far more info. So, but that is accessible with the OCR, but not with the screen reader as you would expect. So, as I say, if you've got Game Pass, feel free. I mean, you may as well check it out, see what you can mess around with. Some people have had more success than others, but please don't go and chuck your money at it. It's not worth it for the moment. You won't get your value. And, again, we're not digging at the people who've tried it. Hats off to you. It's great that you're trying it. There is also, as I said, there's a guide on the Audio Games forum, but there's a post on the forums as well, not the Audio Games, but there's a post on the forums which needs as many upvotes to get this noticed. The problem we're going to have, of course, is there's 30 or 40 of us. Even if we all upvote it, there's posts that got 5,000-10,000 views. and upvotes. It's all right, kind of saying, "Oh, we're going to get all these upvotes and we're going to change the perception of this simulator with accessibility." But we are a very small community, and so doing that is very difficult. You can't just roll in and say, "Hey, not enough's been done on accessibility." For 6 months or whenever it was that this simulator was, officially began in beta, we all looked at this, posted on forums. Some of us had friends in Microsoft. We emailed Microsoft. We did various things. This is not like it's now day one and we've said, "Hey, yeah, we've not done anything." We put in a lot of effort to contact anyone at Microsoft, and got nowhere.
Yeah, and I will say that, and again, I'm not dogging anybody that's wanting to try it and wanting to say, "Hey, let's work with this," but don't put out the wrong message and tell people that it's accessible when it's not. Tell them that it's doable, but don't confuse people and say, "Yeah, you can fly with it," and then they go through all this, garbage with it, because it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Because people come back to us and they say, "No, Declan, no, John, it is accessible." No, it's not. So.
Yeah, very much depends what your definition of accessible is. It's a very wide-ranging thing, and to say, it is, it is apparently it is doable. As in, you could boot up a plane after a lot of fiddling. You might be able to do a takeoff. You're probably going to have some problems. Who knows if you can land? Maybe you can get it down, but that's not what we want. At the moment, we've all got good simulators. They can go on vatsim. They got good planes, good sounds. And I mean, that's something else you have to remember. A lot of the planes are still going over to Flight Sim 2020. Even for sighted people, they are saying GA in this sim is fantastic. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of power on your PC to run this as well, because you're streaming the imagery. It's very high graphics. But they're saying GA, fantastic. Airliners, not there yet through so many levels. So it's the same for them. And they are waiting for premium aircraft and add-ons and sceneries to go across. So it's not... And, we know that the autopilot of the airliners is still very dodgy. It's not correct the way it flies them, so it's probably not the end of the world that we haven't got it accessible. At the moment we're fine with what we've got more exciting news with TFM than this at the moment, and so that's, in my opinion, TFM this year is going to revolutionize things more than FS 2020 has.
Yeah,
and
hands down. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with waiting for FS 2020 to mature, get improved. Who knows, in a year, 2, maybe we get someone with Microsoft and they say, "Yeah, we'll add accessible menus." You never know. But until then, P3D's not going away. FSX for the foreseeable future isn't going away, and we got TFM. But again, hats off to those who've tried it. It's cool to see, and I'm glad to know that it isn't completely inaccessible. It's not useless. It's just very, very difficult to do with very little accessibility. Microsoft gave us nothing. Again, it's not Microsoft. We've just done this of our own initiative.
Yeah. So it's just going to take some time, you guys. Time.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, fly in a sim that actually works. You got FSX, you got P3D. Use one of those, fly, have fun, and at some point, I'm sure it'll be accessible, but it's just not yet.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got on the list. I don't think there's been any releases of new add-ons. I will say, I just remembered that Rob on the WhatsApp group has tried P3D version 5. Now, he has said that, on his machine it runs fine. I'm not saying you got to switch to it. We literally just talked about the differences between P3D and FSX, and I personally still think FSX is far easier to use. But what I am just going to say is, obviously he was using it on a high-end PC, but if you were thinking of switching to P3D V5, and you were thinking, I don't know whether to spend my money on this, I don't know whether it's going to be the same as version 4, as far as he has said, it is pretty much the same, and he says that some of the menus are a little bit easier and a bit more responsive to use. So don't worry if you have purchased it or you're looking at purchasing it; it will still work. You'll be able to fly with it. So I think that is everything for now. We're going to have another podcast next week, I believe, so that we can discuss with Andy or Jason or both the latest TFM developments to keep you all informed. If that gets pushed back, we'll let you know on the Twitter or something, because it might be that it's 2 weeks away, but I discussed with Andy for next week, so we'll see how that goes.
There's quite a bit to talk about as far as just with the developing and stuff. So it's gonna be a good podcast. You guys don't want to miss that. Make sure you tune it in to either, like I said, you got all kinds of options, but
yeah, stay tuned in for that. And I mean, you can probably we were discussing this on the group earlier. The TFM.net builds are getting to a stage now where pretty much all the monitoring functions are done. So the reading of instrumentation and all that kind of stuff that you would use to monitor your flight is there. I'm not saying that the tramp functionality is there. It isn't. It's still being worked on, but it's useful to download it, give it a try, and see as always if there's any bugs, but also how it goes, because there's going to be some improvements to the way things work. There was actually a bug where the localizer and the glide slope were wrong, so the localizer was reading the glide slope indications and the glide slope was reading the localizer. So if you've been having issues with getting the ILS, or thinking, oh, I'm way off on this glide slope, it's saying 99 or 100% down or left or whatever, it's probably because of that. So maybe try the latest build at the TFM snapshots site is it the wiki? It's bvipilots.net, right?
Yeah, bvipilots.net, yeah. /TFM
/snapshot, I think.
Snapshot, yep, that's it.
Yeah.
And at the bottom is the latest one, and the way it works, the very bottom of the page is the latest one.
Yeah.
And then the more you go up, the older ones you get. So just get the one at the very bottom, and there you go.
Yeah. I mean, there are some things to note. The settings dialog isn't fully complete, so you may have to use the CFG config file to edit some of the settings if you really want to change stuff. The first two tabs of the settings dialog are working, but from there it's still being actively worked on. So, but I have to say, I did a flight earlier. I tried it with the new TFM build, and I didn't have any problems. We're obviously still using Tramp, but I could easily monitor all the info with the flight just as I would with the old one. So as usual, the old one is still the stable version. Nothing's changed there. If you want to guarantee that things will work, use that one. But I'm putting it out there that this build of TFM.net is getting very close to where we can say, yeah, this works for monitoring now for everything pretty much, and then it's just a matter of getting Tramp functionality added. Right, so yeah, I think that is everything, all the news. I hope you enjoyed the interview with John Sanders. Thanks to him for coming on again. And have a good week. We will probably see you next week.
Yeah, you guys have a good day, good night, and we'll talk to you soon.